my superpower is my network. And nothing makes me happier than finding a person that has a need and then knowing somebody who has a capability and then saying, hey, you two should talk.
Welcome to the Texas Embassy podcast.
Pleasure to be here.
Thankfully, we finally got to do this. I know we had some technical difficulties, but I'm happy that you're here, and I'm happy that others get to know you as well. So with that, we're going to change it up. This is the first inaugural where I'll say, hey, man, tell us your story.
Well, first, Mark, it's absolutely a pleasure to be here. And yes, the last time I came, I think I was responsible for breaking your equipment. And luckily, you've got great technicians to get it back up. But so I'm Mike Garlington. I am a soldier for life. I'm a 28-year Army veteran, but I come from strong military background. My dad is a 36-year Navy veteran. My stepmom did 27 years in the Navy. My entire family is Navy. My brother served. All of my brother's kids serve. And so we call service to our country the family business. I joined I graduated college this is very weird, but I was the first martial arts major in the United States because I happened to be going to a university where a professor started a multicultural martial arts program. I was a judoka, a judo practitioner, and then a wrestler for my entire life. My mom was trying to get me out of the house while my dad was at sea. So she enrolled me in a judo class, and I did that from the time I was 5 until we moved to Roanoke, Virginia, where there was no judo. So I started wrestling, was a competitive wrestler all through high school. And then I got to college and decided that, I was going to be a graphic design guy, but I only liked to do art when I wanted to do art, and I wasn't really good with deadlines. And I found that when put under pressure, my art really turned to stick figures, and it was really crap. So I went to at my university. They gave you a advisor if you were undecided, and basically it was like a DA6. They went down, okay, who's next? And somehow I got Dr. Jerry Beasley, who was in the phys ed department, and he was the martial arts instructor at my university. And we started talking, and I was like, well, I've always done some sort of athletics, again. And so he was just like, well, hey, I'm starting this new program. And I ended up being the first person to get my credits in. And so that's how I became the first martial arts major in the United States from Radford University in Radford, Virginia. So it was a multicultural program. I studied 9 different styles, had to teach, had to take world religions. It was a very interesting course of instruction. I didn't think through what I was going to do with that. So I settled at graduation that, hey, I'm going to get into federal law enforcement. Spent 2 years interviewing with the Drug Enforcement Agency, with the DEA, only to be told they weren't hiring at the time. And so they said, get some communications and some weapons training, get on with any local police force and kind of go to the drug enforcement side of it. We were in a recession. Nobody was hiring back in 1990. So
you were still living in Virginia at the time?
I was living in Virginia, in Roanoke. I was working at the Olive Garden in Roanoke, Virginia, living in my mom's basement. And I knew that wasn't the way that I wanted to go. So I looked at all my options. I said, I told my dad, I was like, hey, Dad, I think I'm going to enlist. And he was like, son, I'm so proud of you. It was one of those father-son moments, 2 hands on my shoulders, looked me dead in the eye, and he says, and if you don't join the Air Force, I'm breaking both your legs. And so I was like, okay, I'd always heard him talk about how the Air Force took better care of their people. He always had an anecdote how they had the nicest golf courses and the nicest hotels and barracks rooms. then they would always run out of money, and they would say, how do you expect me to fly if you can't give me money for a runway? And so I took the ASVAB, did all the testing for the Air Force, went in to check on my scores. I was going to go into the security police, the SP, and, did I qualify for it? Were there openings? And they were closed. The Air Force had made mission, and my Air Force recruiters were not in the office on a day I came by, but Sergeant First Class Smith from the Army recruiting office.
They were at the golf course.
They were probably at that golf course. Sergeant First Class Smith from the Army recruiting office, which was right across the hall in the recruiting station, was swinging his chain. He goes, "Hey, what's going on, trooper?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here to check on my ASVAB scores. I don't know that I should be talking to you. It's like changing horses midstream kind of thing." And he was like, "Give me 5 minutes. I'll tell you everything the Air Force offered you. I'll tell you how the Army can beat it. And if I get one thing wrong, feel free to get up and walk out." And so I enlisted in the Army that day. This guy had a phenomenal pitch. It wasn't even a pitch. He just sold me with facts. And so I enlisted as an infantryman, was an 11 X-ray, and then fell into the 11 Mike, the mechanized infantry realm, but knew that I had more in me. And so I was talked into applying for officer candidate school while I was at Fort Benning, was accepted, and then was branched as a 19 series. I was an armor guy coming out of OCS, landed in 3-4 Cav in Schweinfurt, Germany, the Division Cavalry for 3rd ID.
As your first assignment?
My first assignment.
Wow.
Yeah. And so really kind of lucked out. And so...
Hey, let's pause real quick.
Yeah.
When you came home and told your dad that you joined the Army, I know that's weighing on somebody's mind.
That's
an interesting story. I want to make sure we capture.
So it was funny because when I said, "Hey, Dad, I enlisted in the Army," he was like, "Son, I'm just proud you got a job." And
that's
so
awesome.
I'm his youngest. I told him, I said, "Hey, Dad, if I'm on a boat, I really want to be fishing or having drinks with umbrellas in them." And he didn't find that too funny, but he understood. And so it led for a career of $1 bets for Army Navy game. Now, my dad was a Mustang as well. He did 6 years enlisted and then 30 years as an officer. He wasn't necessarily a Navy football fan, and I wasn't necessarily a West Point Army football fan.
Right.
I grew to be, but we always had a $1 gentleman's bet over my 28 years of service, and I owed more than I won on that bet. So again, went to Schweinfurt, Germany, stayed there almost 4 years as an armor guy. Even though my branch detail, they were trying to get me to go to my detail course. I was trying to get out of it because I really didn't want. I was branch detail to the ordnance field.
Right.
I really didn't want to do that. Matter of fact, ordnance was number 10 on my list of 10 branches to be branched. And but they were like, "Well, then you can get out," and I wasn't ready to get out at that time either.
And this is all from Germany?
And this is in Germany.
Yeah.
And so I ended up going to the transition course at Aberdeen Proving Grounds, came back to out process, and then went to the captain's career course as a senior first lieutenant. And then really the rest was history. I met up with a bunch of other branch detail guys, and those are kind of who I hung out with. My first assignment coming out of the captain's career course, the logistics captain's career course at that time, combined logistics captain's career course, was Fort Carson. I tried to go be an APMS at Arizona State University. I figured I'd get my master's degree and then get out now that I'm back in the United States,
right,
and I could formulate a plan. They were like, "Well, you've not done any time as an ordnance guy, so we're not sending you there. You don't rate." And
you got to do the time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so my branch guy at the time was also a branch detailed from armor guy who had a little bit of a soft spot for me. I was like, "Listen, I got all the kind of crap jobs because they knew I was leaving the armor field. And then now that I'm an ordnance guy, you guys are punishing me because I spent too much time as an armor guy. I said, well, send me to Fort Carson. And again, this is where I learned the power of a network. My former Squadron XO in Schweinfurt, Germany, was now a squadron commander in 3rd ACR, 3rd Armored Cavalry Regiment. So I wrote Mark Myers a note and said, hey, sir, they have me going to the 43rd ASG. I'd much prefer to serve in the regiment. What can you do? He said he introduced me to a guy named Mike Terry, who was the support squadron commander. And one thing led to another, and my assignment got changed from the 43rd to the 3rd ACR. And that started a 10-year journey, 3 different assignments in the 3rd ACR for me, from troop command to 50 months of KD time as a major. And then my final time was as a squadron commander of Mule Skinner Squadron as the regiment transitioned to Stryker in 2011. So even though I was branch detailed, I got back into armored cavalry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's really what made me successful, is because I understood screen guard cover, because I,
understood the tactician
exactly
perspective.
Yeah, I understood the operations as I was a infantry team leader. I knew how to fight out of an L-shaped ambush. I knew how to set up, supportive fire, and I'm moving. I understood, tactically, at least from a lieutenant's perspective, how to do things, and that really made me understand how to support better, and then talk their language, right?
Especially from the maneuver commander standpoint, right? Just having a support element that understands that aspect and can kind of preemptively
exactly
get situated in better support. Ultimately, you're a dream in that case, right?
Well, and I noticed that a lot of logisticians earn a bad reputation because they don't make decisions well, and that's a little unfair. The decisions they are forced to make aren't life and death like they are for a young infantry squad leader or an armor platoon leader. A young ordnance or quartermaster or transportation, their decisions may mean a tank stays down an extra day. Hey, we got the parts, we'll get on this first thing tomorrow. In garrison, no one's really tracking that, but at wartime, that's absolutely the wrong thing, right? If you've got the parts, you stay late and you get that thing back in the fight, even though it's just going to go back to a motor pool, because you got to train as you fight. And
there's a OR rate that the division has to maintain, or you know what I mean? So you're against the clock either way. There's no waiting to tomorrow.
You're exactly right.
Because the battalion XO is measured against that, right? And then you go up to the support component.
You're exactly right. And so the decision process, and so I can remember thinking that as a captain that had gone through the branch detail that I had a story that I thought the Army should hear, and it was all about decisions, and so my thesis was that kind of, the Army was getting rid of the branch detail program at that time. It's ebbed and flowed back and forth, and I was like, you can't get rid of it, because the best, that's probably too bad, really good log guys come from cutting their teeth in operational assignments, and so because of their ability to make decisions and their way to look at things. And so I wrote this article that I thought was pretty decent, and emailed it. This is right after the Army got email, and I emailed it in one email both to the infantry and the armor magazines.
Nice.
And they both said, well, if infantry magazine's going to publish it, armor magazine's not going to publish it. And infantry was like, well, if armor magazine's going to publish it, infantry magazine's not going to. And I was like, you dummy, you should have sent 2 emails.
Separate, right?
Yeah. Right. But that was kind of the the thesis of my leadership is to, always give young lieutenants an opportunity to make critical decisions, right? And be there to be a safety net, but don't make them for them, because you got to develop them at some point. And we had been a garrison army for a very long time until, the war on terrorism started. And so, we used to do sergeant's time training. You remember sergeant's time training. And so I always saw sergeant's time training as a way to get better at your tasks. And I would have sergeants that would be, hey, we want to enter a building and clear a room. And I was like, you're a tank turret mechanic. I understand that there may be some 1% chance that you ever have to do that. And I want you to be able to do that. But is that the most important thing of your metal tasks that you need to train on? And they would be like, well, no. And then we'd kind of talk through it. And I was like, we could do that, but let's do that. Let's do that as a NCODP kind of thing, but not sergeant's time training.
Let's, if I can, right? You brought up leadership, and I think one of the first things that you said is you grew up in a house that was structured based upon at least a framework of leadership that the military had taught. And so my question is, who really inspired you in your leadership style that you chose, right? Because you very early on saw something that worked, probably at the house or through others. You were looking at things through a different lens through your entire career. So I'm curious to who inspired your leadership philosophy or style?
So, I mean, you would think it would be my dad, right? The naval officer, surface warfare officer. My dad was he was the boomer dad, right? Mm-hmm. Child rearing was for the women folk, right? My dad's from Louisiana, so that's where I come with it. But a lot of discipline, right? Yes, sir, no, ma'am.
Accountability, consequence.
You've got, here's your tasks. You got to walk the dog. You got to cut the grass. You got to empty the dishwasher. You got to set the table. But the enforcer, so he set the standard. The enforcer of the standard was my mother. And so, by the way, I love your mom.
Oh, that's awesome.
We have become very good friends, and I can kind of see a little bit of my mom and your mom.
Yeah.
But my mom was born and raised in Austria.
Wow.
And so she came to the States when she was 15, taught herself how to speak English from watching I Love Lucy, and again, not a very easy upbringing. And she met my dad at a USO dance during Fleet Week in New York City, and they got married and
that's cool.
Started a family, and again, that my mom is a if nothing else is a pretty good disciplinarian, and but very fair. I do recall a story. She and I were, so my parents had divorced, and she remarried, and they both remarried happily, and everybody kind of got along. It's like the picture perfect American divorce story. But I can remember my stepfather, Dr. Aaron Beavers, God rest your soul, sir, kind of got on me because she and I were having a disagreement. And he clamped down on me. He's was a very old school Southern raised gentleman. And he was like, you don't talk to your mom that way. And then my mom jumped his ass she was like, hey, listen, I raised him to speak his mind, to do it respectfully. And he hasn't crossed the line yet. So, I want to hear his side. And that really hit me from my mom's perspective, is that, hey, and then it made me realize that maybe I was pushing it a little bit. But it really made me. She
liked that, I guess, the sense of confidence in what you were believing probably at the time. She didn't want to totally stifle that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And it showed me that she was standing up for me in a relationship that was very important to her at the time. Yeah. And, that kind of started the foundations of how important family is to me now. But again, my mom was definitely taught me a lot of leadership skills growing up. But then once I got into the military, they talk a lot about mentorship in the military, but it was a lot of lip service. Eventually, I think they were almost forcing you to name a mentor on some form, and it was kind of hollow, in my opinion. But I had phenomenal leaders with which to both superior officers at multiple levels, and then great peer mentors as well. I've been blessed to serve with some of the finest Americans in the world. Guys that have gone on to, multiple star general officer levels. And just to be amongst that quality of people, I was always like, hey, listen, I don't have to be number one, but I'll be damn sure I'm not the last guy, right? And so I always had a little bit of dog in me. And so my first squadron commander was J.D. Thurman. And so I was the last lieutenant he welcomed into his squadron before he moved out of Schweinfurt, Germany. Wow. And so left a great impression on me. And then, I had the opportunity to serve alongside and for just some of the greatest folks. 3rd Cav Regiment has, for the armor world is a place where the Army really applies a lot of talent. My first regimental commander was Martin Dempsey. So the 67th colonel of the regiment and the 18th chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Yes. He came back into my story a little bit later, and is always been a great mentor of mine. I worked for H.R. McMaster in the regiment, one of the smartest people I have ever had the privilege to meet. The guy was, and just a great motivator. Probably not for this podcast, but I'll tell you the story before we did the attack in Talifar, Operation Restoring Rights, which is just having its 20th anniversary right now. But he came around personally and talked to each squadron. It was pretty motivating.
I have a H.R. McMaster story too. We'll take that offline. I want to definitely share, but share the same sentiments as you, right? What I've seen of him is he's definitely a true professional in his trade craft, and he's actually been able to articulate that in an effective way.
Well, and when you get to see leadership like that from the spectator seats, and you're like, wow, I tell my son all the time, you can learn something from everybody, right? And that's a very trite thing, but
I love that you said that. That's what I told when I was a battery commander. I told my lieutenants, I said, you will learn from me, either things not to do or things to repeat because you've seen at least some degree of success.
Yeah, as long as you're learning.
Absolutely learning.
Never miss an opportunity to learn something. And so, again, after H.R. McMaster, Mike Bills, who, I got a different set of leadership, interests and skills from him. He went on to be a 3-star. And again, the regiment put me in the presence of a lot of great leaders. The guy that really sticks to mind as a young lieutenant was a guy named Aubrey Garner. The guy could do no wrong. He was the Alpha Troop commander. I didn't work for him there, but he had the kindness of his heart to welcome a brand new second lieutenant who got there right before Christmas into his house for Christmas. I knew nobody, basically in process, got put in a BOQ room, and then I got pulled into his house for Christmas dinner.
That's cool.
And the only thing I knew was that his wife was very demanding. And I was like, oh my God, I got to be on my best behavior, and She turned out to be a hoot. And then we forged a friendship that's lasted 30 years. And he really was the very first person that I could think of. But then I've had all of these others.
And it's hard to pinpoint it, right? In the story career that you and I had, just to put it on one instance, right? Because we've been afforded this opportunity to see exquisite leaders in multiple scenarios, right? In combat, in garrison, in training,
right.
and be able to take the best of that and formulate that. So I know that was a difficult question to answer, but you answered it. It's like, it's a medley of all the leaders that we've seen.
It is. And, the one biggest lesson is if you're going to be a good leader, you have to be full of humility, right? You have to be able to look at yourself and say, hey, I'm not perfect. Mm-hmm. And that leadership trait has really, you don't need to be a negative Nancy and a woe is me and, follow me if you want to. There's times where you have to be super strong and make really tough decisions, and they're not going to be popular, but they're the best ones. But have the humility to know that you don't know it all, and be willing to be vulnerable.
And I think that's where, having I had some great first sergeants, some great sergeant majors, and those are the conversations that you have offline.
Yes.
And that mentorship, right? So when you think about, these other officers, but I've found as well, that's that level of check or humility to be able to, when you say look at yourself in the mirror, that's absolutely there. But sometimes you don't want to look at the first sergeant because you already know where you made the mistakes, and he's going to tell you, because we get better. Yeah.
And, God forbid that I leave out all of the NCO and warrant officer mentorship.
Big time.
In the field artillery community, people, the warrant officers is super important. I learned in the logistics community that if you don't trust your warrant officers, you're not going to get anything done. And all they really want is to be allowed to do their job without a lot of the additional pomp and circumstance. And they earn a bad reputation. But if you give them the ability to police themselves, I found that to be the biggest motivator for warrant officers is get your senior chief, empower him to monitor the rest of them. And then next thing you know, they're all at PT formation, which is kind of weird when they need to be.
The levers. Yeah. As a young lieutenant, you're learning the military, and like you said, I went to a warrant on a scenario, and I learned the power of the Corps, the warrant officers.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, even to this day, some of my best friends, and I would dare say best friends are warrant officers that I basically, gave them the reins, let them run. And they all really wanted to do the right thing. And, in some cases they saved me and the unit that I was assigned to
for millions of dollars. Cases, if not all cases.
So again, that whole, and that leadership has served me well in my transition, out of the military as well.
So when did you transition out?
So I retired in 2019 out of my 06 level command. I commanded Crane Army Ammunition Activity on Naval Weapons Station Crane in Indiana. So NSWC Crane is the third largest naval base in the world because of Crane Army Ammunition Activity, because it's 64,000 acres, but 59,000 acres of it is an Army ammo depot. It is one of two Army 06 level commands that is resident on a Navy base. One is Crane Army Ammunition Activity.
You spoke Navy from being at the household.
Yeah, I knew my port from my starboard. I knew it was a head and not a latrine, a rack, not a cot. But the other is Corpus Christi. And so our Army's aviation, rotary wing aviation depot is on a Navy installation. And so I thought that was very interesting. And I thought, and I did tell my dad that, he got me back. So
Sticking an Army guy on a
Navy
base.
base.
That's right.
So I'm Navy educated. I attended the Naval War College, and I was like, "Hey, I'm done. You paid me back, or I paid you back." But then my final duty station,
Out processing.
which had its own issues because it was considered a remote location, and I had to drive 2.5 hours to Fort Knox, where I started my officer career as an armor lieutenant, is where I left and picked up my DD 214. So I retired very poorly. I tell everybody about that, and so I try to give back to those people that are transitioning now, just to let them know some of my heartaches. No one ever has said, God bless COVID. But so I retired in 2019, started my job with IBM on March 23rd of 2020, which was the cotillion date of COVID as a pandemic. And I onboarded virtually. It was terrible. It took me a while to.
Are you doing this from Indiana as
No,
well?
I was here in Austin.
Okay.
I retired. I came out of command on the 2nd of July of 2019, and then started terminal leave. I came here to Austin to work at Army Futures Command was the plan. Really excited about what they were doing to modernize the Army. It was a less than a year old, and then they came under some investigations for by name hiring too many people. So they did a little bit of a hiring freeze as they kind of worked through how, because they were trying to build very fast.
Yeah, very fast, right.
And it turns out that, the person that had asked me to come here to work at Army Futures Command said, "Hey, if you have another opportunity, you may want to take it."
Right.
Luckily, that person was very upfront with me. He was a general officer, somebody I deployed with. Very upfront, and appreciate him to this day for speaking openly to me about it, which allowed me to pivot. But then COVID hit, and I spent the majority of the year of COVID where I was actually trying to learn my job. No one was traveling. No one was doing much of anything. We were having meetings, but I fixed all the stuff that I had messed up in my transition.
And you landed in a good company.
Well, I tell everybody a little data company out of New York that people may have heard of. And so IBM is a phenomenal company, great tech, very commercially oriented. I used to get upset because I think they only dabbled in the federal space, and they didn't have they used their commercial playbook, and with the modernization and how fast the Army started procuring things, it required a little bit of a change. And the one problem with big companies is they're sometimes not agile enough to hit that.
Right.
And they were falling behind some of their peers in the consulting world. And so I got great. The fact that I lasted 5 years and 10 months is phenomenal. I learned so much about how the Army acquires from being an IBM, tending to programs that they had successfully won and serviced for 13, 14 years, specifically the Logistics Data Analysis Center out of Army Materiel Command. They were one of my clients. Army Futures Command was one of my clients, Army Forces Command. So I spent a lot of time in Huntsville, so much time they charged me Alabama state taxes several years in a row. A lot of time at Fort Bragg. And then, obviously being here in Austin, I had the front door into Army Futures Command. And again,
really the defense ecosystem today, right? You're right there at the beginning of it.
Good friends like Drew Sheberly and the National Security Innovation Council. I was at the initial board meeting of NSIC back when Tony Cuccolo, and by the way, the senior IBM executive in Texas. This was before I got hired by IBM, but that's when I met Jason Kelly. So it was this idea of, hey, we need something to bring national security capabilities into Texas. And so
He played football for West Point?
He played football for West Point, defensive back. Matter of fact, our sons played football against each other. My son played at Round Rock, and his son played at Westwood. And so it was always a very interesting conversation between the two of us.
So you lost money to your dad,
and
because
Jason
of him?
Kelly. Texas high school football, that could be a whole nother podcast. I had actually met Jason Kelly from our mutual friend Chris Dineski, who was kind of my Sherpa into retirement.
Right.
Chris Dineski and I were lieutenants together in my very first unit. At the time, I hated Chris Dineski because he was also branch detailed. And one of us had a dad that was actually working in the Pentagon, and one of us had a Navy father. And one of us got out of our branch detail, and it wasn't Garlington. But I love Chris Dineski. I'd go to hell with a hand grenade for him. And he just happens to also have retired here. He was my in into that little initial National Security Innovation Council meeting, and then it's grown into something great. Chris himself has stood up the Austin Defense Council, which is, again, it's a bunch of folks in the national security space. And one thing that I love about Austin, Texas, and that I will never, I will be buried in this state. One, it's got great veteran benefits, and that's another podcast that we could have. Mm-hmm. But people here genuinely are patriots and want to move things forward. I spent 7 years, give or take, in the National Capital Region doing a couple different assignments. 3 years on the Joint Staff. I was assigned to HRC when it was there, and then bracked them to Fort Knox, Kentucky. But here, people are generally trying to help each other out, and they share information. A pat on the back here is actually, someone trying to help somebody else out. I always thought a pat on the back in D.C. was a recon for a knife, because they're looking to skirt you, steal your information, get ahead of you, close the deal. I'm just that's not good for the Yankees, as I say. I want the United States to remain the best country in the world. I'm super patriotic. Obviously, it's the family business, like I talked about.
Absolutely.
It means a lot to me. And the people, the culture, this flag, this podcast, anything we can do to, help further the republic is what I'm all about. And so I have seen it, from not its infancy, but maybe its toddlership. I was probably a year behind being able to say I saw it at its infancy. But I've seen it grow. I've seen, companies do great. I've seen the ebb and flow, from the quote unquote castration of AFC when they took their spending away from them, to, now.
You're here not day one, maybe day two, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In that way,
yeah,
right.
I didn't change the first set of diapers on it, but right. I've seen a lot of it. But now T2Com is the biggest gorilla in the house, right? It's got the most responsibility, and the fact that it's being now run by the deputy Miles Brown. Oh, by the way, his father-in-law was my first squadron commander, J.D.
Awesome.
Thurman. So it's kind of all in the family.
He's a Citadel grad. Go Dogs, right?
Absolutely. I'm not ready to retire yet. And so I had the opportunity to see the technology in Glīd. And so being an Army logistician and all of us wear a bracelet, all of us have folks that we remember. You can't put everybody that on one. But, I've lost soldiers on convoy ops due to just things outside their control. I saw the autonomous road and rail capability of Glīd Technologies, and I was like, that will save soldiers' lives. That is something I can get behind. And one introduction, to the former chief of staff of Glīd, who was here locally, led to a dinner with the CEO, Kevin Damoa, and Kevin and I
He's another great guy, super
just
guy.
phenomenal.
He's a vet, right, of both the Air Force and the Army.
Buckets of personality, right?
Great leader.
It turns out he and I deployed under H.R. McMaster in 2005-06. We were in the regiment together. We were doing two completely different things, but the fact that the idea for Glīd Technologies was born out of railhead ops in Iraq and out of Fort Carson, Colorado, which is, anybody who's done it knows that it's not the most enjoyable thing ever.
No.
It
was like part of the metal task, right? Even before the war kicked off, you're like, oh man, we got to go do rail ops, and where are the bags of buckets and chains?
Yeah, God forbid you get put on the chain detail, right? And you're like, oh. But where are your leather gloves, right? If you didn't have your gloves, you're going to get Article 15, and you're still going to be on the chain. No,
right.
But and so we had dinner, and I just got super excited, and and you got to have your why. Everybody's got to kind of have their why. Why do you show up? It's not about being financially stable and comfortable. That's nice, but I mean, there's only certain things that I will, and then there's a lot that I will not do. But showing up for this company is easy.
All right, let's tell the audience exactly what Glīd is.
So Glīd is a transportation technology company that has road and rail capable autonomous delivery capabilities. So we have the Glider M, which is a truck with road railer gear. The intent is that it will be optionally manned, but currently it's a manned version that can pick up cargo, can run on rail if rail is available, and then obviously run on the road as necessary. Then we have the Raiden platform, which is, I explain it to people, it's like an autonomous rail car that also has wheels and tires and can go on the road. And then the third product that we offer is Ezra 1.6, which is an AI-assisted orchestration platform. So think of it as a little bit of Waze, a little bit of Amazon, where you can select pickup and delivery. You can put in whatever the cargo is. It'll route you on the best route using both rail and road as necessary. Again, it's an amazing thing that will help orchestrate all of the movement, right? And so,
especially that last mile, right?
First mile. So from the warehouse to getting it out into distribution, and then that last mile because rail, we've been using rail for hundreds of years. Rail works when rail is running. Road works, we know, because you can't get on I-35 or on Mopac without being surrounded by trucks, right?
That's if it's open, right?
Exactly. God love it. We're in the blessed season where UT is not in session, and so you can actually drive in 45 minutes from Round Rock versus 70 minutes. But you go down Route 1, the Missouri Pacific Railway is right there in the middle of it. I see a train on it occasionally, but most of the times I'll be stuck in traffic, and that railway is being unused. And that's what Kevin saw and said, hey, we could take advantage of that. Now, Class 1 rail is tough because it does run on a very good schedule, but there's about 400,000 miles of unused smaller rail that is absolutely underutilized. And if you could service those smaller communities that were built around that railhead they're now kind of drying up and dying because everything is now moving by road. Obviously there's military, if you can take 2 souls out of a truck and put it on a delivery robot, and now there's someone controlling it from a control room, and not necessarily putting their lives at risk. But if we could revitalize those communities that were built around some of those short line rail yards, then again, that's another really strong why. Why do you show up? Because I want to make the world better.
Well, I'm glad you said the world, right? Because, we come from a background where we usually are expeditionary and we think of those ways. And so rail is a common standard of transportation. And when we talk about occupancy, that is an absolute pathway for us, and especially when we have these autonomous systems that are going to be more prolific and available. So we need to make sure that bodies aren't necessarily in a position where their undue risk can be mitigated.
You're exactly right. And, we're not. It's funny because when I talk about Glīd and what it does, the first question that I get from the military side is, hey, because most folks have been in Europe, they're like, hey, do you do multi-gauge rail? And I was like, today our prototype does not, but we absolutely know that that's going to be a requirement. Mm-hmm. We have a plan. We know. So the poles actually have a multi-gauge hydraulic road railer that adjusts based on the gauge. I also tell them, hey, if we go off of standard gauge rail, guess what? We can always go on the road. We do dual capable. So right now we could fix that problem. But the ability to stay on rail and utilize it if it's not being used by trains absolutely makes sense. The second thing that people always talk about is, well, what do the unions think about it? And I'm just like, well, again, we're not trying to put people out of work. We're just trying to upskill them and get them to do some different things. But the great equalizer is always, if I can do it better, faster, safer, and I can get products to market, that typically will win out against.
Yeah, I think, if anything, it's revitalizing unused infrastructure, right? So that it's a job creation opportunity when you think about just putting a platform. Well, we need to make sure that the tracks are even worthy so that it creates maintenance and other things. So we're talking about using.
What's pretty interesting, and I thought was a stroke of genius, one way people aren't just going to let us use their rail. Mm-hmm. And so there has to be kind of a trade-off. Either they're going to charge us to get on and use their rail. But one thing I didn't know is that all that rail every year has to be inspected. And the sensors on our platform can actually do that just by rolling down it. And so if we could provide your whatever you pay to do a rail inspection, and we can do it just by, And so again, it's those kind of ideas. It's that thinking outside of the box. It's that, having a passion to want to change for the better.
Or do a little bit better, right? I mean, this is not like a total shift. This is actually the next step of evolution or innovation.
Right. It's an evolution, not a revolution.
Right.
But it's significant. When I don't know that anybody wants to go back to the iPhone 1, right? And so I see this as, a couple steps up, because again, rail works when rail's going, but there's a lot of dependencies that you need to do on rail. When I commanded Crane, Crane has 100 miles of rail on the installation. There are earth-covered magazines and above-ground magazines on Crane that are only accessible by rail. And so if I could, so when I was in command, it's a Navy installation. The Navy owned the train, but those conductors and the rail crew were only really working for me. And I was just like, why don't they become Army? I'll sign for all of it. I'll take the people on. I'll do all of it. And so that happened under my command. I wish it was my idea. It just happened to take place when I was there. But it takes 3 people to start and run an engine, right? And that's just to move. That's 3 people. If we can do it with at an individual level with one Raiden, then I'm saving plenty of time and effort. And
yeah, you're saving time. I think that those 3 people will actually be put in another position in a role. So it's not like we're downsizing
Exactly.
it another way. It's shifting it to probably a safer environment or a more technical.
Those 3 people could potentially now run 5 different Raidens. So that's 15
Absolutely.
Raidens
Per person.
that each, yeah. And again, we're trying to upcycle and upskill. The whole fact about working with unions and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. I honestly think that capitalism will even that out in the long run. We're not trying to put anybody out of a job. We're just trying to do things more efficiently. When I see it, I always think that that Glide is like a Lean Six Sigma black belts, master thesis. How do you go to any port, go to any major rail yard, and there are just containers stacked up waiting to be either put in a location so that it can continue on, or be put on from a drayage truck off of a ship into. All of that dwell time, all of that material handling, all of that can be eliminated. And as the vice president for defense and strategic programs for Glide, I understand logistically that speed is power, right? Speed is power projection. The longer it sits in dwell, the bigger target it becomes. And believe me, there is no safe space anymore, be it hit from a cyber attack, be it hit from anything, from espionage. There is no more safe space if we get into any kind of competition. So the ability to have multiple options, and that's one of the Glide saying is that Glides, we give commanders options. ASR, MSR is completely clogged up with operational traffic. Well, we'll use the rail because if it's available, freeing up that space. Again, taking souls out of trucks and allowing them to focus on other things. So it's just an evolution in the way that we're doing things. And again, coming back to T2Com and Army Applications Lab and all of the folks that are trying to make the Army better, it just makes Texas and Austin a special place to be. And the fact that you're bringing in, folks from Israel and Canada and Taiwan and Japan now, something really special is happening here, and I'm just happy to be here to watch it happen.
The relationships I look at those as bridges, right? Connecting them back out to scale this national capability, right? And this national way of protecting the homeland is having great allied partners in that way with the capabilities that defend us all.
Yeah, we'll never fight by ourselves ever again, right? And so I really, I've been in and around kind of Q branch, both from my seat in AUSA, but as an admirer of what you're doing, and so, not that you needed to hear it from me, but
I appreciate that.
I'm a fan, and I think that
I am too. That's why I wanted everybody to kind of meet you as well, because you've been here at the beginning, you've seen these patterns, and I want folks to know that the successes that you have and to some degree the lessons learned, they should be able to reach out and pat you on the back and not do a recon. But,
I don't need that. I tell everybody, I said, I grew up being a lineman, right? They're quarterback types, and you need a good quarterback. You also need a good lineman. And I don't need to be front and center. Like I said, I don't need to be number one, but I'm damn sure if I'm not going to be last. But I had lunch today with a guy that I just happened to meet up at the Capitol factory, who's starting his own company in the space realm. And so, he has no defense background. He saw Space Force was kind of a thing that was starting up. There was a recent article at the Army and the Army Space Corps, which they've stood up, just got a big grant to do something. And so he reached out to me and again, that my superpower is my network. And nothing makes me happier than finding a person that has a need and then knowing somebody who has a capability and then saying, hey, you two should talk.
That's kind of the magic of what we're seeing here, at least locally.
That's exactly what's happening here in Austin.
Yeah.
And that, to me, if anything else, I'm a bit promiscuous on LinkedIn. So no judgment, but I find that is the fortress of solitude for my superpowers, right? I have that one location where I have multiple thousands of connections. And if I'm looking for somebody that has a special skill or works for a certain company or knows somebody who maybe that I need to talk to, I'm absolutely.
It's a powerful tool.
I spent just a short story on networks and all of that. I worked for the Transregional Threats Coordination Cell, the T2C2. I'm a plank holder in that organization for the Joint Staff in the J5. So it originated as the Pakistan-Afghanistan Coordination Cell. They started this AFPAC hands where you learned the language. You would go to Afghanistan, do a tour, then come back to either the Pentagon or CENTCOM headquarters, and you were basically they were using your knowledge that you learned over years and years. So it was a little bit of an experiment, and so the AFPAC hands program kind of died out, and the PAC, or the Pakistan-Afghanistan Coordination Cell, morphed into the Transregional Threats Coordination Cell. And so Jamie Gerard, the former Delta commander, he kind of led it when he was a one-star. And I was his logistician, but they had the J-Rock, and you were actually a big part of that on the acquisition side. Mm-hmm.
The process.
So, yes, I attended a lot of those J-Rock things in the Pentagon. That happened, once every 2 weeks, I think. And I would take notes and say, hey, boss, here's what you need to know from the kind of the acquisition or the log side. But I really found a lot of use being his COOPS chief, right? Because, he needed to kind of understand what was going on right now to help inform policy and strategy moving forward. And obviously he had walk-in authority to Joe Dunford's office and spent a lot of time up and around that part of the E-ring. So he was like, hey, Mike, this is some information I need. I need you to just figure out where to get it. So I made a lot of good friends in the J37, which, the special operations guys that are part of the J3. We were doing a lot of work in Syria and stuff like that. And so those guys were seeing it every day. They had all of the information. There was no conduit into the J5, go figure, the stovepipes. And so those guys, I went in, I established some trust with them. And then they were just like, yeah, we'll get that to you. We'll get that to you.
That's kind of a magic superpower of yours, right? It's that being able to establish very early trust in others. And I think that's very much
I have been
playing
accused
out.
of being a little bit mafia-like. I take that as a compliment. I make it a habit never to ask for something from somebody the first time I meet them, right? And so got to do a little bit of intel gathering. Story that there was a Navy report that that my boss needed that the Navy had. We didn't have really any. They had no reason to give it to us, and so he was just like, "Hey, I need you to get this for me. I need you to get me this information." We didn't know that it was in a report. My brother worked in the N51, so he was a strategy guy with the Navy. As a civilian, GS-15. We used to have lunch at least once a week when we were both in the Pentagon. We had spent careers in
That's pretty
so
neat.
we never saw each other except for this time. And it just so happens we're in the cafeteria in the Pentagon, and I was like, "Hey, do you know anybody who has this access to information on this?" And he was like, "Yeah, strangely enough, I do." It was a guy that I was on the USS Wasp with back in, whatever. And he was like, matter of fact, there he is. And so it was an introduction. And I was like, "Hey, good to meet you. I'm his brother, Army guy, Navy guy." I was like, "Hey, what time do you get in tomorrow? I want to buy you a cup of coffee." And so the guy was just like, "Hey, listen, I on this metro, everybody kind of knows their schedule." And so I bought him a cup of Dunkin's coffee. We talked about it. I told him what I was doing. And he was like, "Yeah, I got that report." And I was able to get it and hand walk it into my boss. And he was like, "Mike, how did you get this?" And I was like, "Sir, I could tell you, but then it'll take your time from reading it." So, and I became the guy that could just figure it out. But I had a protocol that, don't go asking for things on the very first time you meet anybody. You got to get to know people, because people are what make things go around. And there were some people who didn't want to take any time to meet me, and then I'd find a way around them or whatever. But treat people like humans. Let them know, I'm looking for this reason. If there's any way I can repay it, or sometimes even doing something for somebody without being asked, then they may or may not feel like they owe you. But I was able to really grease the skids and get around it's a big building.
Very big building.
And there are people that are on one side of it that never see people on the other side.
But it's human connections, right?
But if you meet in the middle,
right.
You go to the cafe, you get some
where the
vitamin
owl
D.
is sitting at the top there.
Yeah.
Let's meet at the owl.
Yeah, go get some vitamin D, to go meet at the owl.
Right.
Everybody was, again, trying to, push the ball down the field. And so that networking is really, I learned a whole bunch of lessons, and I try to do that today. I mentor folks that are retiring. I was like, "Hey, let me tell you what not to do, right? Let me tell you, what you really need to think about." You get out. I had no idea what am I worth as a retired colonel with this experience? What do I even need to ask? You don't ask for money in the Army. You're at a rate. Everybody knows what everybody else is getting paid. How long are you in? What's your rank? Okay, I can look at,
And that's public knowledge too,
Yeah.
which doesn't necessarily help when you're transitioning sometimes.
When you're working in in the private industry, you don't even know what to think about.
Right.
Where do you start?
Right.
And
it's tough.
And so, I love having those conversations with people. I love trying to share my knowledge.
That's great.
Don't suffer the same things I suffered if I've already done it, right? And all you got to do is listen and ask, And so,
let me ask you one final question. I can tell you're on a mission, and that mission's never ending. And one of the things that we like to do here in the podcast is allow you to pick a call sign, right? We've seen all the movies, and usually these great leaders have great call signs.
Right.
So this is the only time probably that you get to pick your own.
Yeah.
To really codify, the mission that you're on.
Yeah.
So what would that call sign be?
Well, I've had a lot of call signs, both given, some earned, over my lifetime. But if I got to pick one, better than ogre, which what they gave me from Revenge of the Nerds when I was playing high school football, I would probably say forge. Because I like to build strong teams. I like to build strong narratives. I like to build things, both with my hands and in an organization. And so, I thought about this because I did my homework on the podcast, and I was just like, wow, that's a great question. What would I want to be called? And I know, I've seen a lot of people pick things that they used to be called. But if I could pick one, I'd say, Forge 6, because I'm all about building things of impact.
Yeah, and you're doing it in
I'm trying.
Brand new startup. You're doing it here in the ecosystem. You're doing it here in the great state of Texas. So this has been a great podcast. I really appreciate you coming back, even though there was a technical glitch before. This won't be the last time. I know we get you on this podcast, but I really appreciate the time.
I love what you're doing. I love the team you've built. I love your mom. We're LinkedIn. We're LinkedIn friends too. So everything that you're doing, I'm in support of, and I appreciate you letting me be a part of it. And I just dare to be great, and let's do great things together.
I dig it. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
appreciate it.